Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and this one is kind of wow. Look at this. This is from True Pundit, and it's federal bombshell. Fusion GPS bribed dozens of MSM, mainstream media journalists, with cash while news companies paid firm to dig dirt on Trump. Check this out. By the way, this came out a day ago. High ranking FBI insiders are pulling back the curtain on Fusion GPS, the firm that commissioned and spread the bogus Trump dossier. It appears the embattled intelligence firm was quite busy paying off big media reporters, according to federal sources who have traced dozens of transactions between TD Bank and media members, as well as media organizations, sources confirm. But stunningly, big media organizations have employed Fusion GPS to dig dirt on politicians and DC's elite, namely Donald Trump. Fusion GPS was on the payroll of the media and in turn had members of the media on its payroll, one FBI insider said. Bombshell revelations. FBI insiders confirm Fusion GPS employed law firms as well as shell companies to send and receive funds to and from media and reporters. But the embattled firm also used its accounts at TD Bank to directly commission reporters. Likewise, Fusion GPS received funds from media companies into its own accounts at TD Bank, FBI insiders said. There are dozens of payments from the media flowing into their Fusion GPS account, one federal law enforcement official said. One company wired funds to Fusion GPS more than a dozen times. Why would media companies commission Fusion GPS? Likely to dig dirt on enemies or secure records that reporters could not legally obtain, one federal law enforcement insider said. One FBI insider said the payments to Fusion GPS coincide with Donald Trump's run for the White House. The payments were made between September 2015 and September 2017, records show. The unthinkable, the mainstream media paying Fusion GPS for dirt on Trump to the same firm the Democratic National Committee paid to fund the bogus Trump dossier. And at the same time, Fusion GPS bribing journalists to place stories, likely negative, about Trump, as well as spread the bogus Trump dossier around. Stunning. Was BuzzFeed, the only company to publish the full bogus dossier, on that list? And who's on the payroll? We're trying to run that information down. And why aren't these people behind bars? This story is developing. This guy is really going after him here. Wow, that is so huge. Fusion GPS, when we find out, has its tentacles everywhere. And not only them, but Perkins Coie. Oh, I'm pretty sure Perkins Coie was the lawyer that the Backpage.com guys chose. So I'm pretty sure they're involved in that too. I mean, they're like everywhere. Everywhere you turn, Perkins Coie shows up, or Fusion GPS. So, wow, this is great news. This comes out, it's going to be huge. Okay, and so that was the major thing I had. And the other thing I wanted to point out to you was this. Nate Cain, you may know, is the guy whose house was raided. He's a whistleblower on the Clinton Foundation. And about 3 months ago, the FBI raided him. And Q indicated that it was for his protection and maybe to seize what he had so it didn't fall into the wrong hands. I'm not sure. It was a little nebulous. You know how Q posts. Anyway, this is what Nate tweeted on the 20th. Update, 3 months after the raid, I have been let go. Very disappointing, considering 2 letters of accommodation, and there I think he means letters of commendation, in the last year for exceptional work, and have not been charged with anything. Please pray for us. I did the right thing by blowing the whistle. God has a purpose in all this. So if you are a praying person, please pray for him, because you know what happens when somebody goes against the Clintons. So keep him and his family in your prayers because, wow, I mean, he did a very brave thing and necessary. I mean, we need whistleblowers like that. So you can see over here his relevant people. This is his bio. Husband, father, U.S. Army vet, cybersecurity expert, federal whistleblower. I love my God, my family, and my country. I am a patriot. So keep this guy in your prayers if you're a praying person. I think he needs it. And then there's one other thing I wanted to share with you, and that is this article right here. This is how SCOTUS weaponized the press against the people. Oh, this article, it's very eye-opening, and it's about a court case, New York Times v. Sullivan. So, Covington Catholic could be the opportunity of a lifetime to finally overturn the beast that is New York Times v. Sullivan. I didn't know about this case until I read this article, and I did a little bit of checking on it, and yeah, this has done us a great disservice over the years. Surely the Supreme Court of the Civil Rights era did not envision a robust and vibrant dialogue on matters of public interest to also feature media-induced death threats and Twitter mob violence against a group of Catholic school children for attending a peaceful assembly. Yet, tucked away inside a not oft-discussed but then hailed 1964 landmark decision, New York Times Company v. Sullivan, you will find the bulldozers that have paved the way for a virtually unchecked Fourth Estate tyrant to deliver this exact situation, and it was decided 9-0. This monster of a case was built on a libel suit brought by Montgomery, Alabama Police Commissioner L.B. Sullivan against the New York Times Company over a published advertisement titled Heed Their Rising Voices. Sullivan claimed damages totaling $500,000 that were affirmed by the Supreme Court of Alabama for untruths regarding events surrounding Martin Luther King Jr. Perhaps providentially, the Covington Catholic media spectacle happened to also coincide with the name of Dr. King. The dizzying array of social media accusations, denigrations, press deletions and retractions, apologies, and sad scrambles for any post hoc justification imaginable, all occurring throughout Martin Luther King weekend. While echoing Dr. King's doctrine of nonviolence, the New York Times ad portrayed events in a way that was arguably harmful, stating King had been arrested 3 more times than he had in fact been arrested, and wrongly insinuating that the Montgomery police, of which Sullivan oversaw, had been aggressively deployed to the Alabama State College campus. The United States Supreme Court went all in for the press, with its disciples proclaiming it an occasion for dancing in the streets, citing the needs of the moment over the need for truth and substance, in unpaused jubilation that the press had been officially freed from the shackles of self-policing. Covington Catholic is the story of how that idea went terribly wrong. The court's primary error is steeped in deprivation of context, evident in its tunnel vision angling, which hooked onto one particular aspect of the First Amendment, freedom of the press. The court failed to fully embrace the amendment in its opinion. The part they forgot? The right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, unabridged. New York Times v. Sullivan stands diametrically opposed to this portion of the First Amendment, and here's why. The decision categorically infringes on the ability to publicly assemble and seek redress for injuries caused by a libelous press. The condition under which an individual is forfeited any additional legal shelter granted by their state or local governments is if that person happens to be a public figure. This includes not only politicians, but also everyday people who may have been abruptly thrust into the limelight, even if reluctant or by happenstance, while attending a public rally, like the schoolboys from Covington Catholic. The ruling created a special exception for the press by raising the evidentiary threshold to either an incredibly difficult to prove standard of malice or a still judicially ambiguous, reckless disregard for the truth. Try wading into the myriad of cases that have since evolved from the deformed beast that is New York Times v. Sullivan. Layers upon layers of intellectual legalese tying itself into knots on the peripheral in heavily deliberated avoidance of why it can never work. The reason we cannot create a constitutional exception to shield the press from liability to public figures is that it is the press that inextricably creates public figures. How does somebody become a public figure? Because it's in the press. The press is who makes people a public figure. So this is why we cannot possibly have a constitutional exception that will shield them from this issue. Anyone can become their next target. The late Justice Antonin Scalia, while sitting next to Justice Ruth Ginsburg in an interview, said of the decision, it was wrong. He laughed jovially along with the opportunity to reveal that Ginsburg would unquestionably reaffirm the decision. I think George Washington, I think Thomas Jefferson, I think the framers would have been appalled at the notion that they could be libeled with impunity, and when the Supreme Court came out with that decision, it was revising the Constitution, Scalia said. Our most newly minted Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, experienced the fallout of New York Times v. Sullivan firsthand. It's sobering to consider that the salacious and fabricated media bombs launched and planted squarely on his shoulders could potentially preclude his weighing in on the Covington Catholic case, or similar should it ever come his way. Although Kavanaugh has relayed to the Senate that he has great respect for precedent, he is foremost an ardent constitutionalist, and precedent removed of constitutional context and largely defined on the wings of a past moment is easily outdated. One thing is apparent. Covington Catholic is the culmination of a cacophony of seemingly unrelated events on an interwoven timeline set on a collision course with destiny. If you are perfectly fine with the free reign of the press to poison our public discourse with lies and destroyed lives, consider the mere possibility of the call for Kavanaugh's recusal to be the most damning and consequential example. New York Times v. Sullivan indemnifies the press in selectively gorging on victims who will best feed its own industrial mass, with tentacles reaching all the way into the Supreme Court, so that New York Times v. Sullivan can reaffirm New York Times v. Sullivan. It exists to serve itself, and that, America, is a danger to us all. I mean, this is just very well written, and it makes such a perfect point. We have set the press up in such a position with this particular court case. Wow, it gives them so much power because they're the ones that create public figures. So if they don't like someone, all they have to do is make them into a public figure, if only for a short time. And when they do that, then they can say whatever they want about them, whether it's true or not, and have no penalty whatsoever for doing that. That's a very dangerous thing to have happen. I mean, I'm glad this guy put this out. I don't know who he is. Here is his Twitter feed. He only has 6 tweets. He's following 2 and he has 5 followers. So there you go. I don't know who this person is. I don't, but he evidently must have some kind of law background because this is very much couched in legal terms, and this person knows what he's talking about with this, in my opinion. So that's what I've got for you, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to put a couple more things together. I have some interesting articles that came up, and I'll let you know on those. In the meantime, you can do me a big favor by clicking that subscribe button down below. I would love that. I have a birthday coming up in a short time. I would really like to hit some big numbers by the time I get there. So you can help me out and make sure you click that notification bell down there too so you get notification whenever my videos come out, because you know I don't put them out on a regular basis yet, but I'm trying. I'm getting closer all the time. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.